There was an idea
to see if we could become something. We could fight the battles. In time, you will know what it's like to live all the same. Destiny still alive. Evacuate the city.
Welcome to Z Cineplex, say your ultimate entertainment destination. Welcome to Z Cineplex, the home of entertainment, creativity, and cinematic excitement. Our channel is dedicated to bringing viewers a rich collection of engaging content that celebrates the world of movies, storytelling, and visual entertainment. Whether you're a passionate film enthusiast, someone who enjoys discovering new cinematic experiences, or simply looking for high-quality entertainment, Z Cineplex is designed to be your go-to destination. We strive to create content that is informative, enjoyable, and engaging for audiences of all ages, offering a unique blend of movie-related features, entertainment updates, insightful discussions, creative videos, and much more. Every upload is crafted with attention to quality, ensuring that our viewers receive an enjoyable experience that keeps them coming back for more. At Z Cineplex, we believe that cinema is more than just watching films. It's about experiencing emotions, exploring stories, appreciating creativity, and connecting with people who share the same passion for entertainment. Our mission is to build a vibrant community where movie lovers and entertainment enthusiasts can discover exciting content, share their opinions, and stay connected with the latest trends in the entertainment industry. We are committed to consistently improving our content, embracing new ideas, and delivering videos that entertain, inform, and inspire our growing audience. Whether you're here for movie highlights, entertainment discussions, reviews, cinematic moments, or fresh creative content, Z Cineplex promises an enjoyable journey filled with excitement, quality, and unforgettable entertainment. Join our community by subscribing, turning on notifications, and becoming part of the Z Cineplex family as we continue to explore the fascinating world of cinema and entertainment together. Thank you for your support, and welcome to Z Cineplex, wherever video brings entertainment to life. Avengers: Infinity War is a 2018 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics superhero team The Avengers, produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It is the sequel to The Avengers 2012, and Avengers: Age of Ultron 2015, and the 19th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo and written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, the film features an ensemble cast including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Donnie Guerrera, Letitia Wright, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana +A, Josh Brolin, and Chris Pratt. In this film, the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy attempt to stop Thanos from collecting the 6 powerful Infinity Stones as part of his quest to kill half of all life in the universe. The film was announced in October 2014 as Avengers: Infinity War A Part 1. The Russo brothers came on board to direct in April 2015, and a month later, Marcus and McFeely signed on to write the script for the film. which draws inspiration from Jim Starlin's 1991 comic book The Infinity Gauntlet and Jonathan Hickman's 2013 comic book Infinity. In 2016, Marvel shortened the title to Avengers: Infinity War. Filming began in January 2017 at Pinewood Atlanta Studios in Fayette County, Georgia, with a large cast consisting mostly of actors reprising their roles from previous MCU films, including Brolin as Thanos. The production lasted until July 2017, shooting back-to-back with the direct sequel, Avengers: Endgame, 2019. Additional filming took place in Scotland, the downtown Atlanta area, and New York City. With an estimated budget of $325 to $400 million, the film is one of the most expensive films ever made. Avengers: Infinity War premiered at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, on April 23, 2018, and was released in the United States on April 27 as part of Phase 3 of the MCU. The film received positive reviews from critics, with praise for Brolin's performance and Russo brothers' direction, as well as the visual effects, action sequences, dark tone, and musical score. It was a major box office success, becoming the fourth film and the first superhero film to gross over $2 billion worldwide, breaking numerous box office records, and becoming the highest-grossing film of 2018 and the fourth highest-grossing film at the time of its release both worldwide and in the United States and Canada. It received a nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 91st Academy Awards. Among numerous other accolades, the sequel, Avengers: Endgame, was released in April 2019. Avengers: Infinity War begins in the immediate aftermath of the destruction of Asgard, as Thanos and his Black Order Ebony Maw, Cull Obsidian, Proxima Midnight, and Corvus Glaive intercept the Statesman, the refugee vessel carrying the surviving Asgardians. Thanos has already obtained the Power Stone after attacking Xandar, and he is now pursuing the remaining Infinity Stones so that he can complete his plan to eliminate half of all life in the universe. The Asgardian survivors attempt to resist him, but Thanos proves overwhelmingly powerful. He defeats Thor and easily overpowers the Hulk, who attempts to fight him without restraint. Loki tries to deceive Thanos by pretending to submit, but after making a final attempt to kill him with a concealed blade, he is killed by Thanos. Thanos then takes the Tesseract from Loki, crushes it, and retrieves the Space Stone hidden inside it. Heimdall uses the last of his strength to summon the Bifrost and send the Hulk away from the ship toward Earth, saving him from Thanos' forces. Thanos then kills Heimdall and orders his forces to destroy the Statesman, leaving Thor among the wreckage as Thanos departs with the Power and Space Stones. Hulk crashes into the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York City and reverts to Bruce Banner. He immediately warns Dr. Stephen Strange and Wong that Thanos is coming and that the Mad Titan intends to use the Infinity Stones to wipe out half of all living beings. Banner explains that the threat is unlike anything Earth has previously faced, prompting Strange to contact Tony Stark. Stark, who is spending time with Pepper Potts, follows Banner to the Sanctum, where the heroes discuss the Infinity Stones and Thanos' larger plan. Their conversation is interrupted when Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian arrive in New York to obtain the Time Stone, which Strange possesses within the Eye of Agamotto. Strange refuses to surrender it, and a fierce battle breaks out around the Sanctum. Spider-Man, who has been following the alien invasion from a nearby school bus, joins the fight and helps Stark and Strange battle the Black Order. Although Maw cannot simply remove the Time Stone because it is magically protected, he succeeds in capturing Strange and transporting him aboard his spacecraft. Stark and Peter Parker follow Maw's ship into space, with Peter secretly boarding the vessel and ultimately becoming involved in the mission to rescue Strange. Wong remains behind on Earth to defend the Sanctum and protect the Time Stone's former location. Elsewhere in space, the Guardians of the Galaxy detect the distress signal from the destroyed Asgardian vessel and arrive in time to rescue Thor. After explaining that Thanos has already begun collecting the Infinity Stones, Thor concludes that his enemy is probably pursuing the Reality Stone next, which is located on Na'er in the possession of the collector, Tain Liratai Van. Thor also realizes that his existing weaponry is inadequate to defeat Thanos and decides that he needs a new weapon capable of killing the Mad Titan. He therefore travels with Rocket and Groot to Nidavellir, a legendary forge inhabited by the dwarves. There they discover that Thanos previously attacked the forge and nearly destroyed its population, leaving King Eitri as one of the few survivors. Thor convinces Eitri to help him create Stormbreaker, an immensely powerful battle axe capable of summoning the Bifrost. The process nearly kills Thor, but he survives and obtains the completed weapon, preparing himself to return to the fight. Meanwhile, Peter Quill, Gamora, Drax, and Mantis travel to Nidavellir in search of Thanos. When they arrive, they initially believe they have an opportunity to stop him, but they discover that Thanos has already acquired the Reality Stone from the Collector. Using its power, Thanos manipulates reality itself and overwhelms the Guardians. Gamora attacks him, but Thanos ultimately captures her. Because Gamora knows the location of the Soul Stone, Thanos uses Nebula's suffering as leverage to force her to reveal what she knows. Gamora finally tells him that the Soul Stone is located on Vormir. Thanos takes her there, where they encounter the Red Skull, who has been cursed to serve as the guardian of the mysterious planet and explain the conditions required to obtain the stone. Red Skull reveals that the Soul Stone can only be acquired through the sacrifice of someone the Seeker truly loves. Thanos is forced to confront the one person he genuinely cares about, Gamora. Despite her pleas and hatred toward him, he throws her from the cliff, sacrificing her in order to obtain the Soul Stone. Her death becomes one of the film's most consequential moments because it demonstrates the extreme lengths to which Thanos is willing to go to achieve his vision of universal balance. At the same time, Wanda Maximoff and Vision are traveling secretly together in Edinburgh when they are ambushed by Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive. The Black Order's objective is to remove the Mind Stone embedded in Vision's forehead. Vision is severely injured during the attack, but Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Sam Wilson arrive in time to rescue him and Wanda. The three Avengers, who have been operating independently since the events of Captain America: Civil War, bring them to the Avengers compound, where they reunite with James Rhodes and Bruce Banner. Vision explains that because the Mind Stone is part of his consciousness, removing it will probably kill him. He asks Wanda to destroy both him and the stone if necessary, but she cannot bring herself to do it. The heroes instead decide to travel to Wakanda, believing that Shuri's advanced scientific knowledge and Wakandan technology may allow the Mind Stone to be removed from Vision without destroying him. The decision turns Wakanda into the central defensive position for Earth's remaining heroes. Meanwhile, Nebula manages to escape from captivity and discovers that Thanos has obtained the Soul Stone. She realizes that he has killed Gamora and sends a message to the remaining Guardians, directing them toward Titan. Thanos' devastated homeworld. Back aboard Thanos' ship, Tony Stark, Peter Parker, and Doctor Strange attempt to escape from Ebony Maw. During the struggle, Peter exploits the fact that Maw is vulnerable to extreme cold and helps Stark defeat him. The heroes rescue Strange and eventually crash land on Titan. There they encounter Peter Quill, Drax, and Mantis, who have also arrived to confront Thanos. Nebula eventually joins them after escaping from Thanos' forces. The group initially clashes with one another because of their different personalities and personal connections to the enemy, but they eventually agree to cooperate in an attempt to defeat Thanos and remove the Infinity Gauntlet from his hand. Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone to examine an enormous number of possible futures. Through his mystical abilities, he sees millions of potential outcomes of the coming conflict and discovers only one in which the heroes ultimately achieve a victory. Although Strange does not reveal the exact details of that future, he understands that certain events must occur exactly as they are supposed to. The heroes prepare an elaborate ambush for Thanos on Titan. When Thanos arrives, they manage to catch him off guard and use their combined strength to restrain him. They nearly succeed in removing the Infinity Gauntlet, but the plan collapses when Nebula reveals that Thanos has killed Gamora. Quill loses control and attacks Thanos in grief and rage, allowing the Mad Titan to escape their restraints. Thanos then defeats the assembled heroes one by one. Tony Stark confronts him directly but is brutally wounded when Thanos stabs him with one of his own weapons. As Tony lies close to death, Doctor Strange makes the ultimate decision to surrender the Time Stone in exchange for Stark's life. Thanos accepts the bargain, takes the Time Stone, and leaves Titan to obtain the final Infinity Stone. Back on Earth, the Avengers prepare for the final confrontation in Wakanda. Captain America reunites emotionally with Bucky Barnes, his closest friend, while Black Panther and the Wakandan forces prepare to defend their nation against Thanos' advancing army. Shuri begins working on a procedure to remove the Mind Stone from Vision's body without killing him. The heroes know they have only a limited amount of time because Thanos is now in possession of 5 of the 6 stones and needs only the Mind Stone to complete the Infinity Gauntlet. The Wakandan defense includes Captain America, Black Panther, Black Widow, Falcon, War Machine, Bruce Banner, Vision, Scarlet Witch, Bucky, Oko, M'Baku, and thousands of Wakandan soldiers. When the alien armies arrive, the heroes fight together in one of the largest battles ever seen in the MCU. Bruce Banner continues to struggle with his inability to transform into the Hulk after the Hulk was defeated by Thanos at the beginning of the film. Instead, Banner enters the battlefield wearing the Hulkbuster armor, using the powerful suit to compensate for the Hulk's absence. The battle becomes increasingly desperate as waves of alien creatures attack Wakanda from multiple directions. Captain America and Black Panther lead the ground forces while Black Widow, Falcon, War Machine, Oko, and the other heroes attempt to hold the enemy back. Proxima Midnight, Cull Obsidian, and Corvus Glaive participate in the assault, but the Avengers and Wakandans eventually manage to defeat the Black Order members during the battle. Thor then arrives dramatically with Rocket and Groot, wielding Stormbreaker, and turns the tide of the battle. His arrival gives the heroes renewed hope, and the combined forces succeed in destroying much of Thanos' invading army. However, the victory is temporary because Thanos himself eventually arrives on Earth. Shuri continues working on Vision's Mind Stone, but she cannot complete the extraction before Thanos reaches the battlefield. The Avengers desperately attempt to slow him down, but none of them possesses enough power to stop him once he begins using the Infinity Stones individually and in combination. Thanos confronts Vision and prepares to take the Mind Stone. Vision understands that the only way to prevent Thanos from obtaining it is for Wanda to destroy him. Although Wanda initially refuses because of her love for Vision, Vision convinces her that the sacrifice is necessary. Wanda uses her powers to destroy the Mind Stone and Vision along with it, seemingly preventing Thanos from completing his mission. However, Thanos possesses the Time Stone and uses it to reverse Wanda's actions. Vision is restored to life, only for Thanos to rip the Mind Stone from his forehead, killing him permanently. With the final Infinity Stone in his possession, Thanos places it into the completed Infinity Gauntlet. Thor then attacks Thanos with Stormbreaker and successfully drives the weapon deep into his chest. Thanos is severely wounded, and Thor believes he has finally defeated the enemy responsible for the deaths of so many people. However, Thanos reminds him that he should have aimed for the head. Despite his injuries, Thanos raises the completed Infinity Gauntlet and snaps his fingers. The combined power of the 6 Infinity Stones is unleashed across the universe in an instant, producing the catastrophic event later known as the Blip. Thanos then teleports away, leaving the surviving Avengers behind without knowing whether their sacrifice has succeeded or failed. One by one, heroes and civilians across the universe begin disintegrating into dust. Bucky Barnes disappears first among the Wakandan survivors, followed by T'Challa, who vanishes in front of Oko and the Wakandan forces. Groot, Wanda Maximoff, Sam Wilson, Mantis, Drax, Peter Quill, Doctor Strange, and Peter Parker also disappear. Peter's death is particularly heartbreaking for Tony Stark, who is still stranded on Titan and watches helplessly as the young hero fades away. Before disappearing, Strange tells Stark that they are now at the point in the future he had previously seen on Earth. Maria Hill disappears after witnessing the devastation, while Nick Fury also begins to disintegrate. Before he vanishes completely, Fury uses a modified pager to send an emergency signal to an unknown recipient, setting up the post-credits introduction of Captain Marvel. After the snap, only a limited number of major heroes remain. Tony Stark and Nebula are stranded on Titan, seemingly without a way home, while Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Thor, Bruce Banner, Rocket, James Rhodes, Akol, M'Baku, and others remain on the devastated Wakandan battlefield. The survivors are left in shock as they realize that their friends and allies have vanished and that Thanos has succeeded. The final sequence then shifts away from the battlefield to Thanos, who has transported himself to a quiet and isolated location. He sits peacefully and watches the sun rise, believing that he has finally accomplished his life's mission and brought balance to the universe. The film ends on this deliberately bleak image, with the Avengers defeated, half of all life erased, and the fate of the universe left unresolved. The events lead directly into Avengers: Endgame, 2019, where the surviving heroes must confront the consequences of the snap and attempt to reverse Thanos' actions. The cast of Avengers: Infinity War is built around one of the largest ensemble lineups in Marvel Studios history, bringing together major characters from the Avengers, Captain America, Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Spider-Man storylines. Robert Downey Jr. stars as Tony Stark, Iron Man, the genius, billionaire, inventor, philanthropist, and principal benefactor of the Avengers. Following the events of Captain America: Civil War, Stark has become increasingly concerned about the possibility of another catastrophic extraterrestrial threat and is determined to protect Earth before it can reach the planet. His relationship with Pepper Potts remains an important emotional foundation, while his increasingly protective attitude toward Peter Parker reflects the paternal bond that has developed between them. In this film, Stark's greatest challenge is not simply defeating an enemy through technology but confronting an opponent whose power exceeds anything he has previously encountered. Downey's performance emphasizes Stark's anxiety, determination, vulnerability, and willingness to sacrifice himself, particularly during the climactic confrontation with Thanos and his devastating reaction to Peter Parker's disappearance. Chris Hemsworth portrays Thor, the Asgardian prince who has become king following the destruction of Asgard. His storyline continues directly from Thor: Ragnarok, leaving him emotionally devastated after the destruction of his homeland and the apparent loss of many of his people. Thor's personal conflict becomes closely connected to his desire for revenge against Thanos after witnessing the destruction of the Asgardian refugee ship and the deaths of Loki and Heimdall. Unlike some of his earlier appearances, Thor is driven throughout much of the film by grief, anger, responsibility, and a determination to obtain a weapon powerful enough to kill Thanos. His journey takes him to Nidavellir alongside Rocket and Groot, where he works with Eitri to create Stormbreaker. The weapon becomes one of the most powerful tools available to the Avengers and gives Thor a genuine opportunity to defeat Thanos during the final battle. Hemsworth's portrayal combines the humor established in Thor: Ragnarok with the darker and more emotionally wounded interpretation of the character. Mark Ruffalo returns as Bruce Banner, Hulk, the brilliant scientist whose exposure to gamma radiation allows him to transform into the Hulk. At the beginning of the film, Banner is separated from the Avengers after spending an extended period as the Hulk, but he is forced back into the conflict when Thanos attacks the Asgardian survivors. After being defeated by Thanos, Hulk is sent to Earth through the Bifrost by Heimdall, where he reverts to Banner inside the Sanctum Sanctorum. Banner spends much of the story attempting to convince the other heroes that Thanos represents an unprecedented threat. However, he experiences an unusual problem because the Hulk refuses to emerge for much of the film. This internal conflict continues the struggle between Banner and Hulk established in Thor: Ragnarok, with Banner increasingly forced to confront the fact that the Hulk is not simply another form he can summon whenever necessary. When the Battle of Wakandan begins, Banner compensates by using the Hulkbuster armor, allowing him to participate in the fight despite the Hulk's refusal to appear. Chris Evans portrays Steve Rogers, Captain America, the former leader of the Avengers who has been operating outside government authority since the events of Captain America: Civil War. Rogers has become a fugitive after refusing to accept the Sokovia Accords and supporting Bucky Barnes, but he remains committed to protecting innocent people regardless of political restrictions. His appearance reflects his transformation into a more independent and hardened version of Captain America, with the character embodying elements of the nomad identity from Marvel Comics without formally adopting the name in the film. Rogers eventually reunites with his former allies, including Natasha Romanoff, Sam Wilson, Bruce Banner, Wanda Maximoff, Vision, and James Rhodes. His return to Wakanda places him at the center of the defense against Thanos' forces, where he fights alongside Kella and the Wakandan army. Shuri also provides Rogers with new vibranium gauntlets, allowing him to fight effectively without his traditional shield. Scarlett Johansson reprises her role as Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, the highly trained former SHIELD operative and veteran member of the Avengers. After the division of the team in Civil War, Natasha has aligned herself with Rogers and operates as part of his unofficial faction. Her experiences have left her more hardened and pragmatic, and she has spent years working covertly while remaining committed to protecting the world. Natasha becomes one of the first Avengers to reunite with Rogers when she and Sam Wilson rescue Vision and Wanda Maximoff from the Black Order in Edinburgh. She subsequently travels to Wakanda and participates directly in the battle against Thanos' army, fighting alongside the Wakandan forces and the other Avengers. Her character represents the experienced, tactical side of the team and remains one of the key survivors of the devastating snap. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Dr. Stephen Strange, the former neurosurgeon who became a master of the mystic arts after discovering the hidden magical dimensions of the universe. As the guardian of the Time Stone, Strange becomes one of Thanos' primary targets. His understanding of magic, time, alternate realities, and cosmic threats gives him one of the broadest perspectives among Earth's heroes. Strange initially clashes with Tony Stark because of their similarly confident personalities, but the two eventually develop a grudging respect while working together against Thanos. During the events on Titan, Strange uses the Time Stone to examine an enormous number of possible futures and discovers only one scenario in which the heroes ultimately succeed. His decision to surrender the Time Stone in exchange for Stark's life therefore becomes part of a larger plan whose consequences are not immediately apparent. Cumberbatch portrays Strange as analytical, arrogant when necessary, but ultimately capable of accepting enormous personal sacrifices for the survival of the universe. Don Cheadle returns as James Ritty Rhodes, War Machine, a U.S. Air Force officer and longtime friend of Tony Stark who operates the War Machine armor. After being paralyzed during the events of Civil War, Ritty has received technological assistance from Stark that allows him to walk again, although his injury has changed his relationship with combat and his willingness to return to active duty. Nevertheless, when Thanos' threat becomes clear, Ritty once again puts on his armor and joins the Avengers. He reunites with Banner and the other heroes at the Avengers compound and later fights in Wakanda alongside Captain America, Black Panther, and the Wakandan forces. His role in the film also reinforces his close friendship with Stark, particularly as the Avengers face the possibility that their longtime teammate may not survive the conflict. Tom Holland portrays Peter Parker, Spider-Man, the teenage superhero who has become Tony Stark's Prop 8 copyright G8 copyright following the events of Spider-Man: Homecoming. Peter possesses enhanced strength, agility, reflexes, spider sense, wall-crawling abilities, and advanced technological equipment provided by Stark. His youthful enthusiasm contrasts with the more experienced and battle-hardened Avengers, but he proves himself to be exceptionally brave and resourceful. Peter notices the arrival of the alien spacecraft in New York and joins the battle against Ebony Maw and Obsidian. He later secretly boards Maw's ship and travels into space with Stark and Strange. During the battle on Titan, Peter plays a crucial role in the attempt to restrain Thanos. His eventual disappearance after the snap becomes one of the film's most emotional moments, particularly because he dies in Tony Stark's presence and repeatedly expresses his fear of disappearing. Chadwick Boseman portrays T'Challa/Black Panther, the king and protector of Wakanda. Following the events of Black Panther, T'Challa is responsible for defending his nation while also deciding how Wakanda should respond to a threat that extends far beyond its borders. When the Avengers bring Vision to Wakanda, T'Challa immediately agrees to help protect him and the Mind Stone. He mobilizes the Wakandan army and joins Captain America and the other heroes in the Battle of Wakanda. T'Challa fights directly against Thanos' forces and demonstrates the strength and leadership expected of Wakanda's king. His eventual disappearance during the snap is particularly significant because it leaves Wakanda without its king and becomes one of the film's most shocking moments. Paul Bettany plays Vision, the artificial being created through the combination of Jarvis, Ultron's synthetic body, and the Mind Stone. Vision's existence is central to Thanos' mission because the Mind Stone embedded in his forehead is the final Infinity Stone Thanos needs. Vision therefore becomes more than simply another superhero in the story. His life directly conflicts with Thanos' objective. Vision is romantically involved with Wanda Maximoff and initially attempts to live away from the larger Avengers conflict, but he is attacked by the Black Order because of the stone. After being rescued by Rogers, Natasha, and Sam, Vision accepts that his death may be necessary to prevent Thanos from obtaining the Mind Stone. His emotional connection with Wanda ultimately leads to one of the film's most tragic moments when he asks her to destroy him, only for Thanos to reverse the act with the Time Stone and remove the Mind Stone himself. Elizabeth Olsen portrays Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, a member of Rogers' faction of Avengers who possesses powerful supernatural abilities, including telekinesis, energy manipulation, and mental influence. Wanda's relationship with Vision becomes one of the film's central emotional storylines because she must choose between protecting the person she loves and preventing Thanos from obtaining the Mind Stone. She initially refuses Vision's request to destroy him, but later accepts that his sacrifice may be necessary. During the Battle of Wakanda, Wanda uses her immense powers against Thanos' forces while simultaneously trying to protect Vision. Her eventual destruction by the snap is one of the many devastating consequences of Thanos' victory. Anthony Mackie returns as Sam Wilson, Falcon, a former military parascuman and longtime ally of Captain America. Equipped with an advanced wing pack, aerial weapons, and specialized combat technology, Sam provides crucial support during the battles against the Black Order. He has remained loyal to Rogers following the events of Civil War and joins Natasha in rescuing Vision and Wanda. Sam subsequently travels to Wakanda and fights alongside the Avengers and Wakandan forces. His disappearance during the snap emphasizes the devastating scale of Thanos' victory and leaves the surviving heroes facing the aftermath without several of their most experienced allies. Sebastian Stan portrays Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, Steve Rogers' closest friend and a super soldier who was previously transformed into a brainwashed assassin by Hydra. After being rehabilitated in Wakanda, Bucky is given a new life and becomes known informally as the White Wolf. He receives a new vibranium arm and joins the defense of Wakanda when Thanos' forces invade. Bucky's reunion with Steve is an important emotional moment because it reconnects two characters whose friendship stretches back to World War II. During the final battle, Bucky fights alongside the Wakandan forces but ultimately becomes one of the first major heroes to disintegrate after Thanos activates the Infinity Gauntlet. Tom Hiddleston reprises his role as Loki, Thor's adopted brother and one of the MCU's most complex anti-heroes. Loki appears at the beginning of the film aboard the Asgardian refugee ship and attempts to protect Thor and the remaining Asgardians from Thanos. Although Loki has spent much of his life manipulating and betraying others, his final actions demonstrate that his relationship with Thor has changed significantly. After making one last attempt to kill Thanos, Loki is strangled to death by the Mad Titan. His final declaration of himself as an Odinson represents a symbolic culmination of his long character journey and establishes Thanos as an enemy capable of killing even major MCU characters without hesitation. Idris Elba portrays Heimdall, the powerful Asgardian guardian of the Bifrost. Heimdall remains loyal to Thor and the Asgardians during Thanos' assault on the refugee ship. Realizing that the Hulk must survive to warn Earth about the coming threat, Heimdall uses the Bifrost to send Bruce Banner away from the ship. Thanos then kills Heimdall, making his death one of the opening indications of the enormous danger facing the heroes. Peter Dinklage plays Eitri, the king and master weaponsmith of Nidavellir. Eitri is one of the last surviving dwarves after Thanos destroys the forge and its inhabitants. Thor, Rocket, and Groot seek his help in creating Stormbreaker, a weapon capable of challenging Thanos. Eitri assists Thor despite the devastating circumstances surrounding Nidavellir and ultimately helps produce the weapon that allows Thor to seriously wound Thanos during the climax. Benedict Wong returns as Wong, a master of the mystic arts and protector of the Sanctum Sanctorum's magical artifacts. Wong fights alongside Doctor Strange, Tony Stark, and Bruce Banner when Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian attack New York. After Strange is captured, Wong remains behind to protect the Sanctum and the magical defenses of Earth rather than pursuing the heroes into space. Palm Clemente Eve plays Mantis, a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy with powerful empathic abilities that allow her to sense and influence the emotions of others. Mantis participates in the confrontation with Thanos on Titan and becomes particularly important when the heroes attempt to restrain him. Her abilities help keep Thanos under control for a brief period, although the plan ultimately collapses after Quill learns of Gamora's death. Karen Gillan portrays Nebula, the adopted daughter of Thanos and sister of Gamora. Nebula's traumatic relationship with Thanos is central to her character, as she has spent much of her life suffering because of his preference for Gamora. After escaping from captivity, Nebula joins the heroes on Titan and helps them understand Thanos' movements. She is one of the few major characters to survive the snap and remain stranded on Titan alongside Tony Stark, making her one of the survivors who carries the emotional consequences of Thanos' actions into Avengers Endgame. Dave Bautista portrays Drax the Destroyer, a member of the Guardians whose primary motivation is revenge against Thanos for killing his family. Drax joins the Guardians in their attempt to stop Thanos and later participates in the battle on Titan. His characteristic bluntness and humor provide moments of comic relief amid the increasingly dark story, but his personal hatred of Thanos also gives the conflict an emotional dimension. Drax ultimately disappears during the snap after Thanos completes the Infinity Gauntlet. Zoe Saldana +A plays Gamora, a former assassin who was adopted and raised by Thanos after he destroyed her homeworld. Gamora has rejected her adoptive father's ideology and dedicated herself to becoming a guardian of the galaxy. Her knowledge of Thanos makes her uniquely important to the heroes because she understands both his personality and his objectives. Gamora fears that Thanos will eventually discover the location of the Soul Stone, and her worst fears become reality. Thanos sacrifices her on Vormir to obtain the stone, making her death one of the most significant emotional events in the film. Ariana Greenblatt portrays the younger version of Gamora seen during the character's memories of her childhood under Thanos' control. Van Diesel provides the voice of Groot, the tree-like member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Unlike the fully mature Groot seen in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, this version is an adolescent who behaves more like a rebellious teenager. Groot travels with Thor and Rocket to Nidavellir and ultimately plays an important role in creating Stormbreaker by providing a piece of his own body as the weapon's handle. His relationship with Rocket and his developing connection with Thor add humor and emotional warmth to the cosmic storyline. Groot later participates in the Battle of Wakanda before disappearing during Thanos' snap. Bradley Cooper voices Rocket, the genetically engineered raccoon-like mercenary, bounty hunter, weapons expert, and member of the Guardians. Rocket accompanies Thor to Nidavellir and develops an unexpectedly meaningful relationship with the Asgardian king. He helps Thor obtain Stormbreaker and later joins the Battle of Wakanda. Rocket's survival after the snap becomes particularly important because he is one of the few Guardians left alive. Actor Sean Gunn once again served as Rocket's on-set stand-in and motion reference performer. Gwyneth Paltrow returns as Pepper Potts, Tony Stark's fiancée, copywritee and the CEO of Stark Industries. Although Pepper has limited screen time in the film, her relationship with Tony provides an important emotional counterpoint to his superhero life. Tony's desire to build a future with Pepper contributes to his growing anxiety about the possibility of another catastrophic event. Their conversation at the beginning of the film establishes Stark's personal motivation and gives greater emotional weight to the dangers he faces later. Benicio del Toro appears as Tainlir Tyvan, better known as the Collector, the eccentric cosmic being who possesses an enormous collection of artifacts, creatures, and rare objects. The collector's possession of the Reality Stone makes Na'er an important location in Thanos' quest. Thanos attacks the collector's collection and takes the stone before confronting the Guardians. The sequence also contains visual references and background details connected to other Marvel properties. Josh Brolin delivers the performance of Thanos, the film's central antagonist and, in many respects, its primary character. Thanos is an intergalactic warlord from Titan who believes that the universe's resources are insufficient to support its growing population. Having witnessed the destruction of his own world and believing that his warnings were ignored, he develops a radical philosophy that half of all life must be eliminated to restore what he considers balance. His objective requires him to collect the 6 Infinity Stones, including the Power, Space, Reality, Soul, Time, and Mind Stones. Brolin portrays Thanos through both voice performance and motion capture, giving the character a mixture of physical intimidation, calm confidence, emotional conviction, and distorted affection toward Gamora. Unlike many conventional MCU villains, Thanos views himself as a necessary savior rather than a conqueror, making the conflict fundamentally ideological as well as physical. His increasing power is visually emphasized by his gradual acquisition of the Infinity Stones and his reduced dependence on armor. By the climax, he becomes capable of defeating nearly every hero assembled against him and successfully activates the completed Infinity Gauntlet. Chris Pratt portrays Peter Quill, Star-Lord, the half-human, half-celestial leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Abducted from Earth as a child and raised by the Ravagers, Quill has developed into an irreverent but capable leader. His relationship with Gamora becomes particularly important in Infinity War, as his love for her conflicts directly with the Guardians' mission to stop Thanos. After discovering that Thanos killed Gamora, Quill's emotional reaction causes the hero's carefully constructed plan on Titan to fail, allowing Thanos to break free. Despite his impulsive behavior, Quill remains committed to protecting his team and ultimately fights alongside the Avengers against the larger threat. Downey appears as Eko, the head of Wakanda's Dora Milaje and one of T'Challa's most trusted warriors. Eko helps coordinate Wakanda's defense and fights directly alongside Black Panther and the Avengers during the Battle of Wakanda. Letitia Wright portrays Shuri, T'Challa's younger sister and Wakanda's brilliant scientist. Shuri is tasked with finding a way to remove the Mind Stone from Vision without killing him, making her technological expertise essential to the Avengers' strategy. Winston Duke plays M'Baku, leader of Wakanda's Jabari tribe, who joins T'Challa's forces against Thanos. Florence Kasumba reprises her role as Ao, a member of the Dora Milaje, while William Hurt appears as Thaddeus Ross, the U.S. Secretary of State. Kerry Condon provides the voice of Friday, Tony Stark's artificial intelligence assistant. Additional returning characters include Jacob Batalon as Ned Leeds, Peter Parker's close friend Isabella Amara as Sally, Tiffany Espenson as Cindy, and Ethan Dizon as Tiny, Peter's classmates, and Samuel L. Jackson and Kobe Smulders as Nick Fury and Maria Hill. In the film's post-credits sequence, Fury and Hill are shown experiencing the effects of Thanos' snap, with Fury managing to transmit an emergency signal before disappearing. The message reaches Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, establishing the connection to Captain Marvel and Avengers. Endgame. Thanos' elite servants, collectively known as the Children of Thanos or the Black Order, are played through a combination of live-action performance, voice acting, motion capture, and digital visual effects. Terry Notary portrays Cull Obsidian, a physically enormous and exceptionally powerful warrior who participates in the attacks on New York and Wakanda. Tom Von Lawler portrays Ebony Maw, the group's most psychologically manipulative and intellectually dangerous member, whose telekinetic abilities make him a formidable opponent for Doctor Strange and the Avengers. Carrie Coon provides the performance and voice for Proxima Midnight, the group's highly skilled warrior, while Michael James Shaw portrays Corvus Glaive, a lethal assassin armed with a specialized weapon capable of penetrating powerful defenses. Their characters serve as Thanos' principal agents while he personally pursues the Infinity Stones. Ross Marquand voices Johann Schmidt, Red Skull, who appears as the mysterious Stone Keeper on Vormir. This appearance reveals that the former Hydra commander from Captain America, The first Avenger was transported to Varm after attempting to use the Tesseract, cursed to guard the Soul Stone. Red Skull explains to Thanos that the stone requires a sacrifice of someone he truly loves. Marquand replaced Hugo Weaving as the character's voice. The film also includes a cameo by Stan Lee as Peter Parker's school bus driver, while screenwriter Stephen McFeely appears briefly as an aide to Secretary Ross. Kenneth Branagh provides the voice of an Asgardian distress caller heard during the opening sequence. The film also contains several background and cameo references, including Tobias Fawcett from Arrested Development appearing as part of the collector's collection. Jon Favreau was originally intended to reprise his role as Happy Hogan, and Joe Russo filmed a cameo as a paparazzi photographer, but those appearances were ultimately removed from the theatrical version. The production of Avengers: Infinity War was conceived as one of the most ambitious undertakings in Marvel Studios' history, bringing together characters and storylines from across the Marvel Cinematic Universe for an unprecedented confrontation with Thanos. Marvel Studios officially announced the project in October 2014 as Avengers: Infinity War A Part 1, alongside a second film initially titled Avengers: Infinity War A Part 2. With the two movies planned for release on May 4, 2018, and May 3, 2019, respectively. From the beginning, Marvel intended to film the two films back-to-back because of their enormous ensemble cast and interconnected storyline. In April 2015, Anthony and Joe Russo, who had already directed Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War, were hired to direct both films, while Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely were brought aboard the following month to write the screenplays. The writers drew significant inspiration from Jim Starlin's 1991 comic book storyline The Infinity Gauntlet and Jonathan Hickman's 2013 Infinity, although the finished film substantially reworked those comic stories to fit the established MCU continuity and the individual character arcs developed over the preceding decade. The filmmakers also approached the story through the structure of a large-scale heist movie, with Thanos functioning as the central force attempting to acquire the 6 Infinity Stones one by one. Kevin Feige emphasized that the two Avengers films were intended to function as distinct cinematic experiences rather than simply one story artificially divided into 2 installments. To reinforce that distinction and avoid the impression that the first film was merely an incomplete chapter, Marvel removed the Part 1 designation in 2016, and the film was ultimately titled Avengers: Infinity War, while the second film later became Avengers: Endgame. Principal photography for Avengers: Infinity War officially began on January 23, 2017, at Pinewood Atlanta Studios in Fayette County, Georgia, under the working title Mary Lou. Trent Opolak served as director of photography, collaborating closely with the Russo brothers to establish a visual style capable of moving between intimate character-driven scenes, Earth-based action, cosmic environments, and enormous battle sequences. Infinity War and Avengers: Endgame were filmed concurrently and were among the most technically demanding productions undertaken by Marvel Studios. The filmmakers used the Alexa IMAX cameras for the two films, making Infinity War one of the first major Hollywood features to be photographed entirely with IMAX digital cameras. This format allowed the production to capture the enormous scale of locations such as Wakanda, Titan, and the various cosmic environments while retaining the flexibility required for complex visual effects work. The decision to use IMAX digital photography also reflected Marvel's intention to make the Avengers films feel substantially larger and more immersive than earlier MCU entries, particularly during the film's major action sequences and ensemble battles. The scale of the cast created significant logistical challenges, as Infinity War brought together performers from nearly every major corner of the MCU, including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Don Cheadle, Tom Holland, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Danai Gurira, Letitia Wright, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana A++A, Josh Brolin, Chris Pratt, and numerous other returning actors. Marvel carefully coordinated the schedules of the performers because many of them were simultaneously required for Endgame. The production also incorporated extensive performance capture work for digitally created characters, most notably Josh Brolin's Thanos and the members of the Children of Thanos. Brolin performed Thanos through a combination of facial and full-body performance capture, allowing the visual effects team to translate his performance into the enormous digital character while preserving subtle emotional details. Actors portraying Ebony Maw, Cull Obsidian, Proxima Midnight, and Corvus Glaive similarly contributed voice and performance capture work, with stunt performers and stand-ins assisting with physical sequences where necessary. These techniques were essential because Thanos was not intended merely to function as a conventional computer-generated villain. The filmmakers wanted him to carry a complex emotional storyline and remain psychologically credible despite his enormous size and supernatural abilities. Production expanded beyond Georgia into several international and American locations. Additional filming began in Scotland in February 2017, with Edinburgh, Glasgow, the Scottish Highlands, and Ward Park Studios in Cumbernauld being used for sequences involving Wanda Maximoff, Vision, and the Children of Thanos. The Scottish locations were transformed into the film's depiction of Edinburgh, allowing the production to create a grounded urban setting for one of the film's major early confrontations. Later in the summer, the production returned to Georgia for filming in downtown Atlanta and Atlanta's Central Park before moving to Queens, New York, in July. These real-world locations were combined with extensive sets, green screen environments, digital extensions, and visual effects to create the film's various fictional settings. Principal photography concluded on July 14, 2017, although Joe Russo subsequently confirmed that additional scenes and unfinished material would be filmed during the following months. Because Infinity War and Endgame were being developed and shot as interconnected productions, the filmmakers repeatedly revisited sequences, adjusted performances, and refined story details during the lengthy post-production process. One of the most complicated aspects of the production was the creation of Wakanda and the film's climactic battle. Building upon the visual world established in Black Panther, the filmmakers worked to integrate Wakanda into the much larger narrative of Infinity War. Practical sets were combined with extensive digital environments to create the Wakandan landscape, battlefield, technology, and surrounding terrain. Chadwick Boseman and the other Wakandan performers also contributed improvised elements to the battle sequences, including the war chants that became one of the memorable details of the confrontation. The Russo brothers were impressed by the energy of these performances and incorporated the material into the final film. The production simultaneously had to coordinate Thor's storyline, the Guardians of the Galaxy sequences, the Titan battle, the New York scenes, and the events involving Vision and the Mind Stone, making the film effectively operate as several interconnected large-scale productions within one movie. The visual effects workload was exceptionally extensive. Industrial Light Magic, Framestore, Method Studios, Weta Digital, NIG, CineSite, Digital Domain, Rise, Lola VFX, Perception, and other visual effects companies contributed to the creation of the film's digital environments, characters, creatures, weapons, effects, and action sequences. Thanos represented one of the largest visual effects challenges because virtually every scene involving him required sophisticated digital character work. The visual effects teams had to translate Josh Brolin's facial expressions and body movements into a fully computer-generated character while ensuring that Thanos could interact naturally with live-action performers. His changing appearance throughout the film was also deliberately designed to reflect his increasing power as he acquired more Infinity Stones, with the character gradually becoming less dependent on physical armor as his abilities expanded. Other major visual effects challenges included Hulk and Bruce Banner's contrasting appearances, the Guardians' alien environments, Doctor Strange's mystical abilities, the Black Order, Vision, the Infinity Gauntlet, that destruction and transformation of various locations, and the film's devastating final sequence in which Thanos uses the completed gauntlet. The filmmakers also devoted considerable attention to the development of Thanos himself, who was designed to function as more than a traditional supervillain. Kevin Feige and the writers regarded him as the central character of the film, while the Russos approached his journey almost as a dark heroic narrative from his own perspective. The production therefore required Josh Brolin to provide a performance that could communicate Thanos' conviction, emotional attachment to Gamora, grief, obsession, and distorted sense of responsibility toward the universe. Brolin's performance was captured and later integrated into the final digital character, while the filmmakers used references ranging from The Godfather to the tragic figure of Quasimodo to help shape his characterization. The absence of armor from much of the film was also an intentional visual decision, symbolizing Thanos' growing confidence and power as he collected the Infinity Stones. His final scenes, particularly the quiet sequence after the snap, were designed to contrast sharply with the enormous battles that preceded them and emphasize that Thanos considered his mission completed. The production also involved extensive practical and digital set construction for locations that could not be filmed conventionally. Avengers, where Thor, Rocket, and Groot encounter Hydra and create Stormbreaker, was realized through a combination of physical production elements and visual effects, while Titan required the creation of an entirely alien environment that could support a lengthy action sequence involving Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and the Guardians. The filmmakers deliberately designed Titan as a visually distinctive but emotionally grounded location, allowing the characters to interact within a believable physical environment rather than simply fighting against an abstract digital background. Similarly, the opening sequence aboard the Asgardian refugee ship required extensive visual effects work to depict the aftermath of Thor, Ragnarok and establish Thanos as an immediate and overwhelming threat. Post-production was consequently enormous in scope, with hundreds of artists and technicians working across multiple facilities to complete the film. Visual effects artists refined character animation, environments, destruction effects, cosmic imagery, magical effects, and the Infinity Stones, while editors worked to balance the film's unusually large number of characters and simultaneous storylines. The production had to ensure that the film remained understandable despite moving rapidly between New York, space, Scotland, Wakanda, Titan, Vormir, and other locations. The editing also had to preserve the emotional progression of Thanos' journey alongside the Avengers' increasingly desperate attempts to stop him. Additional photography continued after principal photography to complete and refine material, reflecting the complexity of assembling a film whose individual sequences were often dependent on extensive visual effects that could not be fully evaluated until later stages of post-production. The final production carried an estimated budget of approximately $325–400 million, placing Avengers: Infinity War among the most expensive films ever produced at the time. The enormous budget reflected not only the unprecedented size of the cast but also the extensive international location work, simultaneous production with Avengers: Endgame, sophisticated IMAX photography, elaborate practical sets, large-scale action sequences, extensive visual effects, motion capture performances, and lengthy post-production. The film's financial scale also reflected Marvel Studios' confidence in the project as the culmination of years of interconnected storytelling across the MCU. Principal actors were among the highest-paid performers in the production, with Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth reportedly earning approximately $15 million each for the film, while the overall production represented a major investment by Marvel Studios and Disney in what was intended to be one of the defining cinematic events of the MCU's Infinity Saga. After production and post-production were substantially completed, Disney moved the film's U.S. release date forward from May 4, 2018, to April 27, 2018, in March 2018 so that the American release would coincide more closely with its international rollout. The film ultimately became the culmination of a production strategy that had begun years earlier, combining characters, locations, technological innovations, and narrative threads from across the MCU. Its production was notable not only for its unprecedented ensemble cast and enormous budget but also for the way Marvel Studios coordinated two interconnected blockbuster films on an extraordinary scale. The result was a technically ambitious production that combined IMAX digital cinematography, practical filmmaking, motion capture, large-scale location shooting, and some of the most extensive visual effects work yet undertaken for an MCU film, establishing Avengers: Infinity War as a landmark production in modern superhero cinema. The music for Avengers: Infinity War was composed by Alan Silvestri, who returned to the Marvel Cinematic Universe after previously creating the acclaimed score for the Avengers, 2012. Marvel Studios confirmed Silvestri's involvement in June 2016, with the composer subsequently agreeing to score both Avengers: Infinity War and its direct sequel, Avengers: Endgame, 2019. His return was particularly significant because Silvestri's original Avengers theme had become one of the defining musical motifs of the MCU, and Infinity War provided an opportunity to revisit and expand that musical identity on a much larger scale. Rather than simply repeating his earlier approach, Silvestri developed a darker, more emotionally complex and expansive score suited to a story in which dozens of established characters face an existential threat from Thanos and the Infinity Stones. Silvestri began recording the Infinity War score in January 2018 and continued their recording process through late March. He described the experience as substantially different from his previous work because the film required him to move rapidly between dramatically different tones and characters. The score therefore had to accommodate intimate emotional moments, comedy, cosmic adventure, supernatural sequences, large-scale superhero battles, tragedy, suspense, and the increasingly ominous presence of Thanos. Silvestri's music frequently shifts between these contrasting moods without losing thematic continuity, helping the film transition smoothly from the Guardians of the Galaxy's irreverent humor to Thor's tragic journey, Doctor Strange's mystical world, Tony Stark's increasingly personal conflict with Thanos, and the enormous battle in Wakanda. The result is a score that functions not merely as background music but as an important narrative device, reinforcing the scale and emotional stakes of the story. One of the most important elements of the score is the return and development of Silvestri's Avengers theme. Originally introduced in the Avengers, the theme appears at crucial points throughout Infinity War, often with altered orchestration and intensity to reflect the fractured state of the Avengers following the events of Captain America: Civil War. Its appearances carry a strong sense of history and familiarity, reminding audiences of the earlier formation of Earth's mightiest heroes while emphasizing how dramatically their circumstances have changed. The theme becomes particularly powerful during the film's major heroic moments, including the arrival of the Avengers and Wakandan forces for the Battle of Wakanda. Silvestri uses the familiar musical material to connect Infinity War with the MCU's previous films while simultaneously giving it a darker and more urgent character appropriate to the impending catastrophe. The score also incorporates and develops musical ideas associated with individual characters and earlier MCU stories. Thor's material reflects the character's transformation following Thor: Ragnarok, balancing heroic grandeur with grief and determination after the destruction of Asgard and the deaths of many of his people. His musical journey becomes increasingly triumphant as he travels to Nidavellir and obtains Stormbreaker, culminating in one of the film's most powerful musical moments when he arrives in Wakanda. Doctor Strange's sequences receive atmospheric and mystical scoring that complements the character's magical abilities and the film's reality-bending imagery. Meanwhile, Tony Stark and the Avengers are frequently supported by variations of Silvestri's established heroic language, allowing the score to communicate their long history even when the characters are separated geographically and narratively. An additional musical connection comes from Ludwig Göransson's theme from Black Panther, 2018, which is incorporated into Infinity War during the Wakandan portions of the film. This material helps establish continuity between Black Panther and the events taking place in Wakanda, particularly as T'Challa, Shuri, Akol, M'Baku, and the Wakandan forces become central participants in the battle against Thanos' army. The combination of Göransson's previously established Wakandan musical identity with Silvestri's orchestral Avengers material creates a distinctive musical fusion, representing the meeting of two major MCU worlds. This is especially effective during the preparation for and execution of the Battle of Wakanda, where the music must simultaneously represent Wakanda's cultural identity and the larger Avengers conflict. The score's emotional dimension becomes increasingly important as the film approaches its climax. Silvestri gradually moves away from conventional triumphant superhero scoring and introduces darker, more restrained and tragic musical passages as Thanos acquires the Infinity Stones. The sequences involving Gamora and the Soul Stone are particularly emotionally driven, with the music emphasizing the tragic relationships between Thanos and his adopted daughter rather than treating the moment as a conventional action sequence. Similarly, the final confrontation involving Vision and Wanda uses increasingly dramatic and sorrowful orchestration as the characters realize that saving the universe may require an unbearable sacrifice. These musical choices help make the film's climax feel like an emotional tragedy rather than simply another superhero battle. The final act is accompanied by some of the score's most dramatic material. As Thanos completes the Infinity Gauntlet and snaps his fingers, the music shifts away from conventional heroic resolution and instead creates a sense of uncertainty, shock, and devastation. The subsequent disintegration of numerous major characters is presented with deliberately restrained emotional scoring, allowing the silence and sparse musical passages to heighten the impact of the moment. The surviving characters' reactions are accompanied by music that emphasizes loss and disbelief rather than victory. The closing sequence, in which Thanos quietly watches the sunrise after accomplishing his objective, provides an intentionally subdued musical conclusion, contrasting sharply with the enormous orchestral passages heard during the preceding battles and reinforcing the film's unusual decision to end from the perspective of its antagonist. Hollywood Records and Marvel Music released the Avengers: Infinity War soundtrack digitally on April 27, 2018. The same day the film opened theatrically in the United States. A physical edition followed on May 18, 2018. The soundtrack was issued in both standard and deluxe editions, with the deluxe release containing extended and additional material that provided a more comprehensive presentation of Silvestri's score. The soundtrack's release marked another significant collaboration between Marvel Studios and its music divisions to preserve the film's musical identity as part of the broader Infinity Saga. Overall, Alan Silvestri's music for Avengers: Infinity War became one of the most significant scores of the MCU's Infinity Saga. It combines the recognizable heroic identity established in the Avengers with darker, more dramatic and emotionally sophisticated material appropriate to a story centered on sacrifice, loss and impending catastrophe. By incorporating established Avengers themes, developing character-based musical ideas, incorporating Ludwig Göransson's Black Panther material for Wakanda, and carefully balancing action, comedy, suspense and tragedy, Silvestri created a score capable of connecting the film's enormous ensemble into a single musical narrative. Its emotional and thematic continuity also established an important foundation for Avengers: Endgame, allowing the two films to function as the musical culmination of the decade-long Infinity Saga. Avengers: Infinity War had its world premiere on April 23, 2018. At the Dolby Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, with additional premiere screenings taking place at the nearby El Capitan Theater and Grauman's Chinese Theater. The highly anticipated Marvel Studios production was subsequently released theatrically across most international markets beginning April 25, 2018, before opening in the United States and several other major territories on April 27, 2018. The film was presented in a variety of premium formats, including IMAX and 3D, allowing audiences to experience its large-scale action sequences, extensive visual effects, and cosmic environments on expanded screens. Its April 27 release represented an advancement from the film's original U.S. release date of May 4, 2018, with Marvel and Disney moving the domestic opening forward so that the film could launch simultaneously with many of its international markets and maximize its worldwide opening. In the United States, Avengers: Infinity War opened across 4,474 theaters, including 408 IMAX locations, making it the widest theatrical release ever for a Disney title at the time and the second widest theatrical release in the United States overall, behind Despicable Me 3. which had opened in 4,529 theaters. The extraordinary demand for tickets led several theaters to schedule overnight and around-the-clock screenings. 3 AMC Theaters locations showed the film continuously for 24 hours, while 53 additional AMC locations scheduled screenings as early as 2 o'clock or 3 a.m. to accommodate the enormous advance demand from audiences. The scale of the release reflected the film's position as a major culmination of the interconnected Marvel Cinematic Universe, bringing together characters and storylines from numerous preceding MCU productions. The film also received an exceptionally large theatrical rollout in international markets. In India, Avengers: Infinity War received what was described at the time as the largest release ever given to a Hollywood film in the country, opening on nearly 2,000 screens and being presented in 4 languages. The movie was additionally distributed in premium motion-based 4DX theaters, playing on 515 screens across 59 countries. These international release strategies demonstrated Disney and Marvel's intention to treat Infinity War as a genuinely global cinematic event rather than a conventional superhero release, with the film being positioned simultaneously for audiences across North America, Europe, Asia, and other major territories. China, one of the world's most important theatrical markets, received the film on May 11, 2018. Its Chinese theatrical engagement was initially scheduled to conclude on June 10, but the release was subsequently granted a rare 30-day extension, allowing it to remain in theaters until July 9. The extension gave the film additional opportunity to benefit from sustained audience demand and contributed to its extraordinary international box office performance. The movie's worldwide rollout, combined with its premium format screenings and unusually broad theater count, helped establish Infinity War as one of the largest theatrical events of the Marvel era. Before the Los Angeles premiere and general theatrical opening, Marvel adopted an unusually restrictive spoiler management strategy. During the film's international press tour in early April 2018, only selected footage was shown to journalists and invited audiences in various cities rather than screening the complete movie for the press. Directors Anthony and Joe Russo deliberately limited the amount of footage shown because of the enormous number of major plot developments and character outcomes contained in the film. This approach was considered unusual for a major Marvel release, as previous MCU films had generally been screened in their entirety for critics considerably ahead of their theatrical debuts. The decision reflected the filmmakers' concern that leaks could reveal major surprises and undermine the experience for audiences seeing the film for the first time. Marvel and participating theater chains also organized extensive promotional events around the theatrical launch. In the United States, AMC Theaters locations in New York City and Orlando, Florida hosted an 11-film Marvel Cinematic Universe marathon beginning on April 25, 2018, culminating in a screening of Avengers: Infinity War. The El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles organized a similar MCU marathon to coincide with the film's release. These marathon screenings allow dedicated fans to revisit the interconnected MCU storyline in chronological release order immediately before witnessing the latest chapter, emphasizing the unprecedented scale of the franchise's build-up to Infinity War. As part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's overall structure, Avengers: Infinity War served as a major installment of Phase 3, following films such as Captain America: Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Thor: Ragnarok, and Black Panther. Its release was designed not merely as another standalone Avengers adventure but as the culmination of numerous narrative threads that had been developed across the MCU since Iron Man in 2008. The film's theatrical strategy, worldwide release coordination, premium format presentation, tightly controlled press screenings, and extensive fan events all reflected its status as one of Marvel Studios' most ambitious and heavily anticipated releases. Avengers: Infinity War became a historic worldwide box office phenomenon, grossing approximately $678.8 million in the United States and Canada and $1.374 billion in other international territories, for a final worldwide total of approximately $2.052 billion. Its performance made it the highest-grossing film of 2018, the highest-grossing Marvel Cinematic Universe film and superhero film at the time of its release, and the fourth highest-grossing film in worldwide box office history at that point. The film's extraordinary commercial performance was driven by its enormous pre-release anticipation, unprecedented ensemble cast, extensive international rollout, premium format screenings, and its position as the culmination of a decade of interconnected MCU storytelling. Although subsequent releases eventually surpassed several of its records, Infinity War remained one of the most commercially successful films of its era and an important milestone in the history of global blockbuster cinema. The film established an extraordinary worldwide opening record, earning approximately $640.5 million during its opening weekend, surpassing the Fate of the Furious's previous worldwide opening record of approximately $541.9 million. This record remained in place until the following year, when Avengers: Endgame dramatically surpassed it with an opening weekend of approximately $1.222 billion. Infinity War also became the fastest film ever to reach $1 billion worldwide, accomplishing the feat in only 11 days and surpassing Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which had required 12 days. Its premium format performance was similarly exceptional. During its second weekend, the film's worldwide 4DX earnings exceeded $13.5 million, establishing a record for the format at the time. On June 12, 2018, Infinity War crossed the $2 billion worldwide threshold, becoming only the fourth film in history to achieve that milestone after Avatar, Titanic, and The Force Awakens. It reached the milestone in approximately 48 days, making it the second fastest film to cross $2 billion at that point. Behind Avatar's 47-day achievement, Endgame would later surpass both records. The film also earned approximately $140 million from IMAX screenings worldwide, ranking among the format's biggest worldwide successes and establishing the largest IMAX gross for a Marvel film at the time. Deadline Hollywood estimated that the film generated approximately $500 million in net profit after accounting for production, marketing, talent participation, and other expenses, making it the publication's most valuable blockbuster of 2018. The film's commercial success was already evident before its theatrical release through an unprecedented level of advance ticket demand. In December 2017, a Fandango survey identified Infinity War as the most anticipated film of 2018, reflecting the enormous interest generated by the MCU's increasingly interconnected storyline. Fandango subsequently reported that the film achieved the largest initial 24-hour advance ticket sales for a superhero film, requiring only 6 hours to surpass the previous 24-hour record established by Black Panther. Atom Tickets similarly reported that Infinity War sold more tickets during its first day of pre-sales than Black Panther had sold during its entire first month of advance sales. Within 72 hours, Infinity War had established the largest advance sales performance for any superhero film at AMC theaters, with sales running approximately 257.6% ahead of Black Panther, 751.5% ahead of Captain America: Civil War, and 106.5% ahead of Avengers: Age of Ultron over comparable periods. 2 weeks before release, Fandango reported that Infinity War's advance sales were already exceeding the combined advance sales of the previous 7 MCU films during comparable periods and that it had become the company's biggest April release in advance ticket demand. 1 week before release, The Wall Street Journal reported that the film had generated more than $50 million in advance ticket sales, ranking behind only The Force Awakens and Star Wars: The Last Jedi at that stage. Fandango also reported that more than 2,500 individual showtimes had sold out. On Atom Tickets, the film's pre-sales were approximately 7% higher than The Last Jedi and 250% higher than Black Panther at comparable points, while daily ticket sales were reportedly doubling during the week leading up to release. In the United States and Canada, Infinity War opened to an extraordinary $106.7 million on its first day, including approximately $39 million from Thursday night previews, before reaching an opening weekend total of approximately $258.2 million. Its preview gross was the highest ever recorded for an MCU film at the time, surpassing Avengers: Age of Ultron's $27.6 million, and ranked fourth among all films behind The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Approximately $14 million of the film's preview revenue came through Fandango pre-sales alone. Its $106.7 million opening day became the second biggest domestic opening day ever, behind The Force Awakens. The film then generated approximately $83 million on Saturday, establishing the biggest Saturday gross in box office history at that point, while its approximately $69.2 million Sunday became the biggest Sunday gross ever recorded. Its resulting $258.2 million domestic opening weekend surpassed The Force Awakens' $248 million and established a new all-time record. IMAX contributed approximately $22.5 million to the domestic opening weekend, making it the biggest Marvel opening for the format and the third largest IMAX opening overall at that time. AMC reported that the film achieved the company's biggest Friday and Saturday grosses for a single movie, while Fandango sales accounted for approximately $84 million, or around 30% of the weekend's domestic box office, representing the largest share ever generated by the ticketing service for a single film at that point. The film continued to break domestic records during its first week. On the Monday following its opening weekend, Infinity War earned approximately $25 million, establishing the highest-grossing Monday in April and the second-highest Monday ever recorded for an MCU film behind Black Panther. It followed that performance with approximately $23.5 million on Tuesday, establishing the highest-grossing Tuesday for an MCU film and the biggest Tuesday in May at the time, surpassing The Avengers. The film reached $300 million domestically in only 5 days, tying The Force Awakens for the fastest film to reach that milestone. In its second weekend, Infinity War remained at number 1 with approximately $115.5 million, giving it the second-largest second weekend in domestic box office history behind The Force Awakens. It also crossed $400 million domestically in just 9 days, becoming the second fastest movie to reach the total after The Force Awakens. During its third weekend, it again remained at number 1 and crossed $500 million in 15 days, making it the second fastest film to reach $500 million at the time. Its domestic IMAX total had reached approximately $48.1 million, making it the highest-grossing MCU film in the format domestically. After dominating the box office during its first 3 weekends, Infinity War eventually surrendered the top position to Deadpool 2 during its fourth weekend and fell to third place behind Deadpool 2 and Solo, a Star Wars story, during its fifth weekend. Nevertheless, its cumulative earnings continued to rise rapidly. By May 23, 2018, the film had surpassed $600 million domestically, reaching the milestone in approximately 26 days and becoming the second fastest film to achieve it behind The Force Awakens. It remained among the domestic top 10 through its ninth weekend. Its final domestic gross of approximately $678.8 million placed it among the highest-grossing films ever released in the United States and Canada and made it one of the most successful superhero films in domestic box office history. At the time, it ranked behind Black Panther among superhero movies domestically, although later MCU releases would substantially alter the historical rankings. Internationally, Infinity War was equally successful, earning approximately $382.7 million from 52 markets during its initial international opening weekend, with the film debuting at number 1 in every market in which it opened. Its international opening ranked second at the time behind The Fate of the Furious, which had opened internationally to approximately $444.2 million. IMAX contributed approximately $18.5 million to the international opening outside the United States, Canada, and China. surpassing The Force Awakens' comparable IMAX opening and establishing a new record for that category. The film broke opening weekend or opening day records across numerous territories, including South Korea, Mexico, Brazil, India, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Central America, Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Venezuela, Bolivia, South Africa, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and several West African markets. France recorded approximately $17.7 million for its opening and achieved the country's biggest superhero film opening at that time, while several Nordic and European territories, including Denmark, Finland, Norway, Portugal, and Sweden, also recorded their largest superhero openings. The United Kingdom delivered one of the film's most important European performances. Infinity War earned approximately $8.9 million on its opening day, establishing the biggest MCU opening day and the third biggest opening day ever recorded for a Disney film in the market. Its opening weekend reached approximately $41.4 million. Making it the third biggest opening weekend in the United Kingdom at that point and the second biggest opening for a Disney release. Germany recorded approximately $14.7 million, establishing the country's biggest superhero opening at the time, while Argentina delivered one of its biggest opening days ever. Japan opened to approximately $9 million, representing the second biggest opening for an MCU film in that market, while Australia generated approximately $23.2 million, giving the film the country's second biggest opening weekend ever at the time. Across Europe, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and other international regions, the film repeatedly established new records for superhero releases. During its second international weekend, Infinity War remained number 1 in 54 markets, demonstrating that its enormous opening was not simply the result of front-loaded fan demand. Russia delivered an especially notable performance, with the film earning approximately $4.9 million on its opening day, reportedly the biggest opening day in the country's history at that point. Its Russian release was complicated by scheduling considerations surrounding Victory Day, with the government initially requiring a later release date before ultimately allowing the film to open earlier under conditions concerning the May 9th holiday. Infinity War became the first film in Russia to sell more than 1 million tickets in a single day and subsequently generated approximately $17.6 million during its opening weekend, establishing a new market record. Its Russian IMAX opening of approximately $2.2 million also set a record. China represented another enormous component of the film's international performance. After opening there later than many other major territories, Infinity War generated approximately $200 million during its Chinese opening weekend, equivalent to roughly RMB 1.266 billion at the time. This ranked as the second biggest Chinese opening weekend in local currency terms behind The Fate of the Furious. IMAX screenings contributed approximately $20.5 million, giving the film one of the largest IMAX openings ever recorded in the Chinese market. Before release, the movie had already broken China's advance ticket sales record, generating approximately 400 million yuan, equivalent to around $63 million, in pre-sales. China ultimately became the film's largest international market, contributing approximately $373.4 million to its final worldwide gross. The film achieved several other significant international milestones. In India, Infinity War became the first Hollywood film to surpass a superscript $1.2 billion net, equivalent at the time to approximately $29.7 million, while also becoming one of the country's most successful Western releases. In the United Kingdom, it ultimately became the highest-grossing MCU film at the time. During its sixth weekend, its Japanese gross reached approximately $33 million, allowing it to become the highest-grossing MCU film ever released in Japan at that point. Across Latin America and Asia-Pacific, the film established numerous market records, becoming the highest-grossing release ever in markets including Brazil, Indonesia, the Philippines, Central America, Bolivia, Venezuela, Mexico, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Malaysia, Singapore, India for a Western release, Vietnam, Thailand for a Western release, and Mongolia. It also became the highest-grossing superhero film in numerous European markets, including the United Kingdom. By the end of its theatrical run, Infinity War had accumulated approximately $1.374 billion internationally, with China at approximately $373.4 million, the United Kingdom at $95.7 million, and South Korea at $92.8 million, ranking among its largest international contributors. Its overall international performance made it the third highest-grossing film of all time outside the United States and Canada at that point. Combined with its approximately $678.8 million domestic gross, the film reached a final worldwide total of approximately $2.052 billion, an extraordinary achievement for a superhero film and one that demonstrated the unprecedented global commercial power of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Its box office legacy was subsequently reshaped by Avengers: Endgame, which surpassed virtually all of its major records, but Infinity War remained a landmark release that proved a superhero film with an enormous ensemble cast and a decade-long serialized narrative could generate the kind of worldwide theatrical demand traditionally associated with the largest event films in cinema history. Avengers: Infinity War received generally favorable reviews from critics, with particular praise directed toward its enormous ensemble cast, emotional stakes, visual spectacle, action sequences, humor, and Josh Brolin's performance as Thanos, although several critics also criticized its dependence on the broader Marvel Cinematic Universe, its relentless pacing, narrative density, and lack of a conventional standalone resolution. On the review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 85% based on 486 critics' reviews, with an average rating of 7.7. The site's critical consensus describes the film as successfully managing an unusually large collection of MCU heroes while confronting them with their most formidable threat, resulting in a thrilling and emotionally resonant blockbuster that largely succeeds in achieving its enormous ambitions. On Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, the film received a score of 68 out of 100 based on 54 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. A major point of critical praise was the way directors Anthony and Joe Russo, together with screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, handled the film's extraordinarily crowded ensemble. Rather than allowing the enormous cast to become completely unwieldy, the filmmakers divided the characters into different narrative groups and allowed their personalities and established relationships to generate much of the film's humor and dramatic momentum. Todd McCarthy of The Hollywood Reporter praised this balancing act, observing that the filmmakers, working under Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige, recognized the inevitable traffic jam of personalities and effectively turned the competing egos into a source of comedy. Owen Gleiberman of Variety similarly considered the movie an energetic and entertaining showcase for its heroes and heroines, arguing that it gives the various characters enough material to remain recognizable while simultaneously advancing their individual mythologies without making the experience feel like an obligatory exercise in MCU continuity. This aspect was particularly important because Infinity War brought together characters originating from previously separate franchises, including the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and several supporting characters, making its ability to maintain a coherent sense of identity one of the film's most frequently discussed achievements. Critics were especially impressed by Josh Brolin's portrayal of Thanos, which was frequently singled out as one of the film's strongest elements. Rather than presenting Thanos as a conventional one-dimensional comic book villain, Brolin's performance, combined with extensive motion capture and visual effects work, gave the character a comparatively complex emotional presence and a recognizable sense of conviction. Richard Roeper of the Chicago Sun-Times praised Brolin as the film's most interesting performer, arguing that his work helped distinguish Infinity War from many conventional superhero blockbusters. Gleiberman similarly described Brolin's motion capture performance as highly effective, emphasizing the personal quality he brought to Thanos' menace. Todd McCarthy likewise praised Brolin's restrained and deliberate interpretation, noting that it provided the character with an unexpectedly resonant emotional dimension and prevented him from functioning merely as a stereotypical supervillain. The critical response therefore regarded Thanos not simply as the physical antagonist driving the plot but as the dramatic center of the film, with his motivations, relationships, sacrifices, and philosophical justification for his actions giving the enormous superhero spectacle a more serious emotional foundation. The film's action and visual spectacle also attracted substantial praise. Critics highlighted the enormous scale of its battles and the variety of settings and character combinations that the Russos were able to bring together. Gleiberman described Infinity War as being packed with spectacular and tense combat sequences, while McCarthy characterized the scale of the action as astonishing. The movie's action was considered particularly effective because it was not confined to a single climactic confrontation. Instead, the narrative continually moved between different groups of heroes and different locations, creating a sense of escalating danger as Thanos and his forces pursued the Infinity Stones. The film combined large-scale battles featuring dozens of characters with smaller confrontations that emphasized individual relationships and abilities. At the same time, some reviewers argued that the enormous scale occasionally became arbitrary, with the outcome of certain encounters appearing to depend more on the requirements of the story than on clearly established differences in power. Nevertheless, even critics who questioned the narrative logic of some action scenes generally acknowledged the technical ambition and spectacle involved in producing them. Another recurring element of the positive response was the film's balance of humor and emotional drama. Despite its unusually dark storyline, Infinity War retained the irreverent tone associated with much of the MCU, particularly through interactions between characters who had never previously appeared together. The meeting of the Guardians of the Galaxy with Thor, the combination of Doctor Strange and Tony Stark, and the interactions between Spider-Man and the Avengers provided numerous comedic moments without completely undermining the seriousness of Thanos' mission. Critics generally appreciated the way these humorous exchanges allowed the film to move rapidly between comedy, action, suspense, and tragedy. Richard Roeper similarly emphasized that, despite its enormous scale, the film contains substantial amounts of action, humor, key